It's here, draft lottery day, one of the biggest days for the Pacers franchise in a while in an offseason, as they will learn. Well, they will pick with their highest draft pick since the 1980s. We'll preview it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News. And today, it's a big day. It is draft lottery day. The Pacers will learn where their first round pick ends up. Huge ramifications for their future of their team building, their cap situation this summer, the rest of the league's cap situation, how the draft might play out, how trades could be facilitated. It's all decided and put into place today. This is the official start of the offseason for most teams that got eliminated before the postseason even began. We'll preview it all today for the Pacers' perspective, the fifth best odds, the history of that pick, the rest of the stuff the Pacers care about, how it could impact their trades, and all that good stuff today. It's a juicy one because this is a huge day for the Pacers. They've been in the lottery before, in the Miles Turner draft, in the Paul George draft, in the Chris Duarte draft, just to name a few, but they've never moved up inside of 10 since they picked George McLeod in 1989. They picked exactly 10 when they picked Eric Dampier in 1996. They picked exactly 10 when they picked Paul George. But this is their first chance at a pick inside of 10 since the 1980s, since before I was born. So let's walk through the odds for the Pacers to land at every single spot. They have the fifth best odds of moving up into the top four of any team. So only the top four picks are drawn. It used to be the top three in the old lottery starting in 2019. They changed it to try to de-incentivize tanking a little bit, not all the way, but now the worst three records all have the same chances at 1, 2, and 3. So they don't want you to necessarily care about being the worst team, just being a little bit bad. It sort of helped. The play-in tournaments help more than anything. So the Pacers have the fifth best chance of moving into the top four of any team. They have a 10.5% chance at number one, 10.5% chance at number 2, 10.6% chance at number 3, and a 10.5% chance at number 4, for a total of 42.1% odds of moving into the top four. So if they had been tied with the Thunder, that they would have split the odds with them, but that's not how it works. So all the teams ahead of them, top three teams have a 14% chance at 1, and the Thunder in fourth have a 12.5% chance at 1. And the Pacers are the last team with over a 10% chance at every single pick inside of the top four. So it's not quite a coin flip. It's a little over 4 and 10. But the Pacers do have pretty good odds of jumping into the top four, but not quite there. And then the fifth pick where they sit now, they only have a 2.2% chance of actually picking 5 when the lottery is all said and done. I will explain why. Despite having the fifth worst record, they only have a 2% chance of actually picking 5th or later on in this segment. But keeping on running through the odds, 19.6% chance of the Pacers picking 6. That's their second highest of any spot. 26.7% chance at 7. A team in the past that was 5th in the new lottery odds finished 7th. 8.7% chance at 8th, and a 0.6% chance at 9. So the most likely result is 7. The second most likely is 6th, and then all the top 4 are the next most likely outcomes. So obviously, it's a bit strange that the team that is 5th cannot, or almost certainly will not, pick 5th, but that's because only the top 4 slots are drawn. So any single team jumping into the top 4 from behind the Pacers means the Pacers won't be picking 5, because the Pacers will either be moving up into the top 4 or get kicked down by that team moving up. So the odds that the Pacers move up, or a team behind the Pacers moved up and the Pacers move up, that's a lot to combine, but that's really low chances, only 2.2%, that the Pacers actually end up picking 5th because the 5th pick is not drawn for. So that does sound counterintuitive, but despite the Pacers, being in the 5th slot, it's very unlikely they finish 5. That said, their expected value is basically 5. So let's get into some nitty-gritty, nerdy stuff that is important to contextualize to get your hopes in the right spot entering this stuff. So the expected value for the Pacers, if you multiply the odds of landing at a certain pick times the pick, their expected value is just over 5. So if you did a million, trillion, gazillion simulations of this, the Pacers, most of the time, the average pick spot for the Pacers would be like just over 5, barely over. So if the Pacers pick 5 in the off chance, that's still a win, given the expected value for them going into this evening, which is, again, very hard to kind of rationalize in your head. But the Pacers getting a top 5 pick is still better than the odds suggest in their favor. And even going by the median outcome, which is, well over 5, because the 50 percentile mark is closer to 5.3 ish. If the Pacers get any of the top 5 pick, including 5, that is a good night for them. Obviously, this is a 4-player draft, so they would like, or it looks like it's a 4-player draft, so they would like to be higher up, and the better pick is better. But given where they are, the expected value and the median outcome is just over 5. So anything in the top 5 is good, and yet the most likely outcomes are 6 and 7, despite the fact that if you did this a trillion bazillion times, they would end up around 5 most of the time. So yes, that's all very confusing. The most likely outcomes, though, are 6 and 7. 19.6% chance the Pacers pick 6, 26.7% chance the Pacers pick 7. In fact, the chance the Pacers end up at 6 or 7, as you just heard from those two percentages, is over 46%, which is higher than the Pacers' chances of finishing in the top 5. There's a better chance the Pacers finish 6 or 7 than they finish top 5. The odds are constructed this way to de-incentivize tanking, and that's why the most likely thing that happens to the Pacers on this evening is either 6 or 7, even though they still have a really, really good chance at jumping up. So it's really kind of hard to contextualize because, it's really easy to be an optimist and say, okay, it's really close to a coin flip that they jump above their expected value, right? 44% chance that they end up 5 or better. A little higher than 44% chance that they end up 5 or better, right? That's close to a coin flip saying, okay, we'll end up better than our expected value, our median outcome, whatever you want to use as your gauge for hope. There's almost a coin flip chance they move up from that. And that sounds awesome because the chance they end up 8 is really low. The chance they end up 9 is like almost impossibly low. So that means, again, it's a close to a coin flip chance they end up with a happy night, and Pacers fans can, have a great day knowing that they have their highest pick in a while, and it could be a franchise-changing player. But the most likely outcomes remain picking 6 or 7. So remember that when you go into this, expect to see when Mark Tatum, if it's Mark Tatum again, walking up there, drawing the little team logos out of the envelopes to announce who's picking at every spot. Really start to pay attention at 8, and then 7 and 6 is where you'll most likely see the Pacers thing come out. And then how it works is all these ping pong balls are drawn from the machine in the back room. For those who've never watched the lottery before, because it never really mattered for the Pacers, they pick these 4 ping pong balls, and then there's a 4-digit combo. Whatever team is assigned that 4-digit combo gets the pick. They do that 4 times, you get the top 4. So they announce in inverse order. So if the Pacers fall to 8, that'll be announced really early. But if they move up into the top 4, the dramatic suspense will happen for a long time. So like they could get to 5, and if it's at 5 and the Pacers haven't been drawn yet, the most likely thing, in fact, over 90% chance, they moved up into the top 4. But if it gets to like 7 or 6 and they get drawn, which is the most likely thing, then they'll just get drawn and the rest of the picks will be concluded. So it is all super confusing to go through because there's such a high chance that they end up with so many different things. Like there's over a 10% chance that the Pacers end up with 6 different picks, and almost, if you count the 8.7% chance at 8, 7 different picks, right? So 9 and 5 are really unlikely, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8 all are decently likely to happen. So like to contextualize it, the chance the Pacers end up in the top 4 is basically the chance of Tyrese Halliburton making a 3. The chance they end up the chance they end up picking 9th is the chance like I play in an NBA game in my lifetime, and everything else is sort of just normal odd kind of jump up moving stuff. About 1 in 4 chance that there'll be 7, and a 1 in 5 chance there'll be 6. So it is all kind of confusing, but I think the Pacers are they went for these odds for a reason. They lost their last 10 games, maybe not on purpose, but certainly were not putting their best foot forward with veterans and minutes in those games. So they wanted these odds, they've got them, and now they just have to hope. So what is the history of this pick, and who is there for the Pacers for this broadcast? What can you expect from the 5th pick come lottery night? Let's talk about all that, how it's gone since the odds changed in 2019. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about 2 wonderful groups of people. First up, the good folks over at PrizePicks. Are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning PrizePicks app. It's daily fantasy made easy, and it's super easy to use. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times what you put in on any entry. It's just you versus projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's super easy. It's safe, and they offer fast withdrawals, and you can use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. They have any prop you could think of. They have so many options on PrizePicks, which is what makes it so fun. Points, rebounds, steals, You name the stat, they got it on there. And you can do mixed sport entries with baseball or whatever you like on there as well. They also have college basketball, college football, NFL, MMA, you name it, they got it for a limited time. PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. You get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single 1 point, but you got to use the code NBA when you sign up. That's right, exclusive offer for Locked On fans. Sign up today with that code NBA for $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores a single point. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. And let's also talk about Built Bar before we jump back in to lottery odds news, how the Pacers' chances are moving up. And Built Bar has a new birthday cakes puffs flavor that is fantastic. I've been eating them almost every day since I got mine. Imagine dipping your finger into a plastic tub of birthday cake frosting, then opening your eyes, realizing you just ate 150 calories and 16 grams of protein in a delicious, basically a candy bar, but it's a protein bar. It's a healthy, awesome protein bar, and that is what Built Bar is. 100% covered in chocolate, delicious protein bar, and there's something for everybody. The new birthday cake puffs flavor is absolutely delicious, but I love the peanut butter brownie. They have a bunch of fruit varieties. They have a mixed box if you want to try 12 of their more popular flavors. They have a bunch of delicious seasonal flavors. There's really something for everybody. 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, only 9 grams of sugar in this limited time birthday cake puff flavor. Most of them have even better macros than that. You can see them all right on the website. Go to built.com to check it out. Use the promo code LOCK15 when you check out, and you will get 15% off your order. That promo code again is LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, I highly recommend checking out Locked On NBA Big Board to hear about all the prospects the Pacers will be hoping to pick in this draft after the lottery does or does not break their way. And of course, we'll continue breaking down some of these top prospects on Locked On Pacers throughout the coming weeks. Even though the Pacers pick will be settled and there's a chance they don't want to pick some of these later in the top 10 guys, I still want to cover everybody. Paolo Banchero was Monday. We'll do Keegan Murray later this week. You won't want to miss all that. All right, this pick, the fifth best lottery odds. In the past, only an 8.8% chance to jump up to number one, only a 30-something% chance to move up at all. So the new odds are better for the fifth worst team. And the Pacers will be happy that the year they finally do a really big blow it up campaign and end up going to pick in the top 10 is a year that the lottery odds have been smooth and helpful for a team in their situation, even though, again, the odds do not necessarily suggest that they will be moving up. So let's go through the history of the three teams that have been in this fifth slot since the odds changed in the 2019 draft lottery. So in 2019, the Atlanta Hawks had the fifth worst record in the league, and the lottery hated them. They fell to eighth that year. That is actually the worst finish of anyone who had five in these new lottery odds. They fell to eighth. The teams that moved up were seventh, New Orleans, eighth, Memphis, and 11th, the Lakers jumping up that year. Right? That is a very plausible outcome. Eighth, 1 in 10, a little worse than that, but about a 1 in 10 chance that something approximating that happens to the Pacers. So that year, the Hawks with eight, they would have picked Jackson Hayes, but they didn't stay at eight. They traded that pick in a big trade with New Orleans. Ended up getting four from the Lakers in the Anthony Davis trade, and then four went to Atlanta. So they picked DeAndre Hunter at four. But the thing to remember there is they traded from eight to four after a bad year after acquiring a star young point guard. Sounds familiar situation for the Indiana Pacers. So the Hawks did move up that year. They chose DeAndre Hunter, who has fit in pretty well in their ecosystem despite a ton of injuries. So that is the first year of the fifth pick in the new odds. In 2020, the Central Division rivals, Detroit Pistons, finished with the fifth worst odds that season. They ended up picking seventh. That is the most likely outcome for the Pacers. That is exactly what happened to Detroit that year. The teams that moved up that year were the Charlotte Hornets, jumped from eighth to third, and the Chicago Bulls jumped from seventh to fourth. The Pistons stayed in that slot, selected Killian Hayes with that pick. Just a fine pick. I like Killian Hayes. Hasn't amounted to much yet, but that is the first two drafts, right? The eighth and seventh were where five ended up. And then last year, 2021, finally a win for the fifth slot. The Cleveland Cavaliers had the fifth best odds. They jump up from five into third, and they get Evan Mobley, who should have won Rookie of the Year to me, although Scotty Barnes was a fine choice. And Scotty Barnes, by the way, who got drafted fourth, was from Toronto, who jumped up from seventh to fourth. A lot of movement last year with the Magic and Thunder falling to 5 and 6 respectively. So the fifth pick has fallen twice, moved up once, which is about what you'd expect. Odds-wise, it's done about what you'd expect so far. And the thing I want to take away is, like, This draft is interesting because of like the tiers of, at least so far, how it looks like people shake out the 1 through 4. But it's, the Hawks they traded a pick that ended up being Jackson Hayes' slot to get up to 4. Like if the Pacers really want to, they can still move up. So even if they don't get into the top 4, it's still really important. And this is obvious, but getting the best pick possible, wanting as few teams ahead of the Pacers to move up is just as important as the Pacers themselves moving up. Like the Pacers, if they don't move up, would love to be 5 or 6 or as high as possible so that they have movement options, so that they have more on the table for them. I know that's really obvious, but just to see the Hawks, the amount they had to give up to go from 8 to 4, that would have been a lot less if they were 6 or 5 or whatever. So it's very important for the Pacers to stay high, to have the most options possible. And we will talk about some of that other trade stuff in the last segment here and the other stuff to focus on. But at 5, it's never been 5. It's never been 4. It's never been 6. It has moved around quite a bit since the new, I keep saying flattened odds, although that's not really a good way of describing it, the more volatile odds that the NBA put in place in the 2019 offseason. For those who don't know, by the way, let's talk about the actual lottery itself. I talked about how it works with the drawn ping pong balls. There will be a broadcast of said lottery, and there's a representative for each team who gets to celebrate or look sad when their card gets drawn. For the Pacers, that is Kelly Krauskopf, assistant GM. She's been with the franchise since 2019. Jumping over from the Indiana Fever. That'll be really cool. Swin Cash will be there for the Pelicans. So some WNBA legends, or at least working for the league legends, going to be there, which is really cool. Krauskopf was the GM of the Fever for forever. In fact, she took over the franchise after working for the WNBA league office. She moved over to help the Fever get going. And her only draft lottery with the Fever was 2000, the year 2000. The WNBA did an expansion draft, and the Fever got the first pick in said expansion draft with Kelly Krauskopf at the helm. So she's 1 for 1. Pacers fans obviously hoping she will jump up to 2 for 2. And then there's a second rep. I basically an auditor who's in the room where the drawing itself actually happens. So like every team can see. I don't think they're allowed to have phones in there. There's like one reporter. Like I think Zach Lowe's written pieces about being in there. And then there's a rep for every single team. So the Pacers rep, I call it an auditor because they're making sure it goes as it's supposed to, or it said it's supposed to, and then they know their pick. That'll be Chad Buchanan, the Pacers GM, and a lot of NBA execs are in Chicago for the draft combine. Anyway, that's where they're holding this whole operation. So, Pritchard will probably be like right outside the doors or something. The Pacers hoping that this could be a great night for the franchise. Of note, I also want to add Domantas Sabonis representing the Kings in the draft lottery, which I think is very interesting. I thought Halliburton had a chance to represent the Pacers. I suggested such on Kevin and Query one morning on ESPN Radio here in Indianapolis. So I think it's cool that Sabonis will be there. And I'm looking forward to seeing this all shake out. And now, to conclude this segment about odds and the 5th pick moving, I'm going to do something I have never done. I'm going to do my first ever Tankathon sim, and I will take a picture so I can validate these results on Twitter. I got my first ever Tankathon sim, the Indiana Pacers picking 4th in this draft. They move up. The Rockets dropped 2 spots. The Thunder moved down to 5. No big movement, though, for me. And my only ever spin. That's pretty interesting. I will tweet this out on the Locked On Pacers account in the morning so you can see the official results of the first and only ever Locked On Pacers spin. So that's the history of 5. That's all the Pacers odds explained. It's all very confusing, but still, you can look all these up. I think there's a couple ways to do it. The NBA website has it itself. They have a nice little table built out. The Pacers website has it. That's what I've kind of been leaning on a little bit. They have a fun gift game you can play on their Twitter account to try to guess where their pick will be. And then Tankathon has a full table with everything. Those are rounded numbers, so it's not exactly perfect, but it's a pretty good way of kind of seeing how everybody can move up and down. So there's one more part of the lottery that is related to the Pacers, but not directly related to the Pacers drawing specifically, and that is how other teams move and how that could impact what happens in the future with other trades, with the history of the league on the line. What do the Pacers want to happen beyond obviously them jumping up to 1? What are the Pacers hoping happens at 2, 3, 4? What teams are important to me, at least, as I look ahead at this offseason? Let's break that all down. Before we do that, though, let's talk about the good folks over at BetOnline.net who continue to be the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season NFL futures, all on BetOnline.net. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. For example, they got the NBA Game 1 lines up. Heat Celtics tomorrow night. That's going to be funny, overlapping with the lottery. Miami favored by 1.5 at home. And then Wednesday night, Warriors, Mavs in Golden State. The Warriors favored by 5 points in game one. I cannot wait to watch those. You can get those lines over at betonline.net. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, Locked On NBA is the way to go, breaking down the latest and greatest news around the association, including this year's playoffs with lots of Game 7s this weekend. So let's talk about the other stuff the Pacers care about in this lottery. And there's some obvious ones and some less obvious ones. And I'm actually going to do the less obvious ones first because I think they're more interesting and they're related to Pacers trades. So let's talk about this draft cycle. I'm going to do a whole show on trades after the lottery, probably the full day later, like Wednesday night will be a reaction day, and then Thursday will be about trades. But if you're the Pacers, and I don't know how they feel about how their tiers break out or how their rankings are, but if you would like to move up and you're the Pacers, your ammunition to move up into the top 4, 3, 2, whatever they want to do is going to be whatever their pick is, assuming they don't get 1 or 2 themselves. Whatever their pick is, 31, 58, Goga Batadze, Isaiah Jackson, maybe. I don't think they would like to do that, but maybe. Future first, they have that kind of ammo, and that's pretty good stuff. But what kind of makes the Pacers interesting in this sort of move up discussions is that they also have guys like Malcolm Brogdon, Buddy Hield, Miles Turner. McConnell doesn't have a ton of value, but the salary value could be important. They have veteran pieces with positive value in place to be a team that, maybe they trade Turner to a team and they get a decent first back for him, and then they flip that first to another team. They also have that Cavs first. I forgot to say that one in the fold that they could use to move up. Maybe they trade Brogdon, use those pieces to move up. So the indirect route is Brogdon to Team X, stuff from Team X to Team Y to help the Pacers move up. But to make things more simple, or to just discuss this in a more direct way, it would be easier for the Pacers to do trades that would allow them to move up if the teams that end up 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever, are teams that want vets or teams that would like to be good as soon as next year. So they're willing to move back if it means they get that stuff to also move up. Let's talk about the Portland Trailblazers as the example here. They have Damian Lillard on their team. They have nice young stuff. Anthony Simons is good. Josh Hart's good. They have some extra firsts from other teams in the fold. They're going to be okay in the future, but I think their situation is pretty obvious. They would like to build and be good around Damian Lillard now. They don't have much longer to do that. So they might be a team that is more willing or more interested in Malcolm Brogdon or Buddy Hield or Miles Turner, whoever, name the vet, right? They might be a team that's more interested in that sort of stuff. So if they jump up, they could be a team that is more willing to trade back a few spots to get those talented vets around Dame. Charlotte, way down in the lottery, could be another one. They've wanted Turner for forever, but even beyond that, they're going to have to pay Miles Bridges. They're going to have to pay P.J. Washington. They're going to have to pay LaMelo. They already have Gordon Hayward under contract. They're going to be super expensive really soon. Moving back and cutting some salary might actually be helpful for them, right? So stuff like that, I think the Pelicans maybe, right? They were just a playoff team. They pushed the Suns to 6. Brandon Ingram looks great. They're going to have to pay Zion soon. They've already paid BI. They have other expensive guys on the team. They already have other youth that looks talented. Herb Jones, for example, on their roster. They might be more willing to move back a few slots. These are just ideas. If you ask the Pelicans host, Jake Madison, he might say no. They would love to pick high one more time, or the Blazers host, whoever. But these are the kind of things that, from a Pacers perspective, they're probably hoping teams that would like to be better sooner jump up, because that would give them more mobility options to move up themselves if the Pacers would like to pick higher in this draft. Maybe Washington's in that boat. If Beal comes back, right, he might put pressure on the organization to be good. The Knicks are always trying to be good. Those are the teams to me, though, that are important to watch. Be first and foremost for the Pacers, because that gives them the most options if they would like to trade up at some point to potentially do that. So that's thing one to watch. Who actually moves up? Is it young teams that want the best talent possible and the Pacers don't move up? That's a bad night for the Pacers. If it's more veteran-based teams or teams trying to get better sooner, that's a little better. The second thing, if the Cavs move up, the Pacers will be so devastated for several reasons. But the first one is that the idea I had forever ago, where the Pacers trade the Cavs back a future second, so the Cavs remove the protections on that pick and give it to the Pacers this year instead of next year, would be impossible if the Cavs move into the top 4. There was no way that trade would happen before the lottery for that reason. But if the Cavs stay at 14, That's a trade that I think makes some sense for both parties. I've explained that on previous podcasts before, but essentially the Cavs cannot trade their first next year now because they're picking 14 this year. But why, if you're the Cavs, would you rather be able to trade your first in 2023 and 2024, or would you rather be able to trade the guy you picked in this draft who won't even be in your rotation as you try to be good next year? That seems like a no-brainer to me. So if you're the Cavs, maybe you'd be willing to trade 14 to the Pacers for your own first-round pick if the Pacers threw in a nice little juicy extra bit of compensation. Just an idea. So if the Cavs don't move up, that's also really good news for the Pacers. It adds that option back to the table. And then big picture, this is the kind of stuff that I think in the lottery is really interesting, right? The Pacers are in the Eastern Conference and the Central Division, and currently they look around and the Bulls are a 6 seed and getting better. They just started a new core. They have Patrick Williams and Kobe White, and the Bucks are still the defending champs, although they're out. And they have Giannis, and they have Drew, and they have Chris Middleton, and they look great. And the Detroit Pistons have Cade Cunningham, who looks like he could be the face of the league in a few years. And the Cleveland Cavaliers have Evan Mobley and Darius Garland. Like, yikes, Central Division's scary. If any of those teams move up, that's bad for the Pacers, right? If Detroit gets the number one pick, they could be an impossibly tough team to beat for Indiana for years and years to come. If the Cavs move up, also obviously from 14, that's devastating, but that would also be terrible news for the Pacers. In general, any team in the East moving up is what the Pacers would like to avoid, right? Especially in a largely considered 4-player draft, having all 4 of those guys go west, assuming the Pacers cannot get them themselves, would be the best case scenario for the Indiana Pacers. So the Pacers' hopes, really it's the veteran teams, but I would say the Pacers' hope is like Sacramento first, San Antonio second, Portland maybe third, and I don't know, fourth is themselves first, the Pacers first, and then those 3 teams. So the Pacers' hope is probably Pacers 1, and then Portland 2, San Antonio 3, stuff like that. But if they themselves don't move up, Portland, San Antonio, any other West team, the Kings, moving up would be what the Pacers prefer, so that those prospects that are talented will not be a team that they have to play either all the time in the regular season or in the postseason. OKC could be another team, but they're already ahead of the Pacers in the odds. So it's going to be a crazy night for the Pacers. It all starts on TV at 8. I will be at the Fever game during the lottery, but Kevin Pritchard's going to speak to the media after the draft lottery. For the first time, we're going to be talking to Pritchard since the season ended. Usually this happens much sooner. So I'll be interested to see how those questions go. So tomorrow's podcast will be all about what happens, obviously. So what it means for the Pacers that they ended up wherever they are, what their options will be going forward, what Kevin Pritchard says, whether that is just draft stuff or other stuff, because that's obviously a huge deal. We haven't heard him talk in a while. All that will be covered tomorrow, because this could be, if the Pacers get to 1, 2, 3, whatever, this could be like one of the biggest days in franchise history for them. They haven't picked this high in ages. And remember, the last time they did, last times they were picking this high when they got Rick Smits and Reggie Miller in consecutive drafts, like, hey, that team went to the finals and could have gone twice if it weren't for the brawl. Like, it's really important, especially with Halliburton and Duarte in the fold, to really nail these picks and really set the foundation for the future of the franchise. So lottery night is humongous. Humongous for the Indiana Pacers. And we'll, of course, break it all down here on Locked On Pacers, and likely a guest, although I have not yet parsed that out, because between the Fever and Kevin Pritchard speaking and the lottery, I'll have a busy night, so it might be a little tough for me to coordinate with someone else. But you will have the best coverage of what happens and what it means for the Pacers here on the Locked On Pacers podcast tomorrow. So thank you guys a ton for listening. If you have any questions about this very confusing odds structure, or how this all works for the Pacers, or if you have any ideas for movement in the draft or anything like that, because Trade Talk is coming later this week, you can hit me up on Twitter at TEastNBA or the show at Locked On Pacers. Thank you guys a ton for listening. I hope you have a non-stressful draft day and can enjoy it, and we will break it all down tomorrow.